The desert night was broken by a single gunshot, echoing like thunder across the barren frontier. Ethan Cole stepped from the shadows, revolver smoking in his grip. His breath came ragged, his eyes burning with old grief. He whispered into the dust, "The past keeps chasing me." The wind howled against the wooden facades of the town, rattling shutters like restless spirits. A horse whinnied in terror as its rider fell lifeless into the dirt, silence devouring the chaos. Ethan's boots sank into the sand, each step heavy with dread, each heartbeat pounding like a drum of vengeance. A lantern swayed, throwing jagged shadows that painted his worn face. He knew there was no turning back. He said, "Blood calls for blood, and I won't run anymore." Morning crept over the desert, the crimson sky painted with streaks of fire. Ethan Cole sat alone at the edge of town, revolver resting across his lap. His mind returned to years past, when betrayal had stolen everything he loved. He muttered, "I've buried too much to keep running." The dry wind pressed against his coat, whispering of unfinished reckonings. He thought of Grady Holt, the sheriff who had worn the mask of justice while bleeding the land dry. Ethan's jaw clenched as he recalled the day Holt took his family's ranch, leaving nothing but ashes. He spat into the dirt, eyes fixed on the horizon. A crow circled above, a dark omen against the morning glow. Ethan said, "Justice comes hard out here, but it comes." Lucas Ward hurried into town, boots too clean for the dust and eyes too bright for the sorrow around him. He spotted Ethan by the fence and approached with eager steps. Lucas said, "You're the one they whisper about, the outlaw who defies Holt." Ethan lifted his gaze, cold and tired. He said, "I'm no hero, boy, just a man chasing ghosts." Lucas grinned despite the warning, adjusting his holster with shaky hands. He was young, restless, aching to prove himself in a land that chewed up dreamers. Ethan studied him, thinking of the weight a boy like that carried into a storm he couldn't understand. The crow screeched again, its shadows sweeping across the dirt. Ethan said, "If you follow me, you'll bleed before you learn." Sheriff Grady Holt stood on the boardwalk, polished boots shining, badge gleaming against his dark vest. His cold eyes swept the dusty street as if he owned every plank of wood and every breath of air. He called out, "Cole, you crawl back here thinking you'll shake the earth?" Ethan turned slowly, his hand brushing against the revolver on his hip. The weight between them was heavy, a silence that threatened to split the morning in two. Lucas shifted nervously, his hand trembling at his side. Holt smirked, the kind of smile sharpened by years of cruelty. Ethan said, "You took everything from me, Grady. One day, I'll take it back." Holt's voice cut like steel. "You'll be dust before you do." Jedediah Boone leaned against the hitching post, gray beard brushing against his faded coat. His limp told the story of battles long buried, his eyes the weight of sins he could not forget. He watched Ethan with quiet sorrow, then said, "You keep walking this road, it'll bury you too." Ethan exhaled, gripping the revolver tighter. "It already did," he answered. Lucas shifted closer, looking from one man to the other, caught between youth's fire and age's ashes. Jedediah's gaze softened, but his words cut hard. "Vengeance ain't justice, son. It's a fire that don't burn out till it eats the hand that lit it." Ethan stared at the horizon, the sun bleeding into the sky, and said, "Then let it burn." The desert sun baked the land, but Ethan Cole sat in the shade of the saloon porch, his revolver close by. His mind wandered to nights when he had lost everything, a memory that bled into every breath. He said, "I ain't chasing revenge for glory. I want peace, but it's buried under graves Holt left behind." Lucas Ward leaned against the railing, restless, fists clenched with youthful defiance. He said, "If we don't stand, Holt wins forever." Ethan's eyes darkened as the saloon doors creaked behind him. Dust rolled down the street like a whisper of storms to come. Ethan murmured, "Peace died with my kin. What I want now is reckoning." Jedediah Boone found Ethan outside the livery, his limp dragging across the boards. His voice carried the weight of years. "You walk in a road lined with coffins," he warned. Ethan met his eyes, firm and unshaken. I already walk among ghosts. Jedediah sighed, stroking his gray beard, his gaze drifting to Lucas. That boy's got a spark, but sparks burn fast when the wind blows. Lucas stiffened, pride mixing with doubt. Ethan's jaw set harder as the wind picked up, carrying grit into his teeth. He said, "If sparks burn, then let them light the way. Holt's time is ending." Clara Weston entered the saloon with a grace that cut through the smoke-filled air. Her eyes, sharp yet sorrowful, found Ethan across the room. She said, "You don't belong here, not with that weight in your eyes." Ethan turned, the glass in his hand trembling slightly. "I belong nowhere," he replied. Her dress, too fine for this place, swayed as she drew closer. Men at the tables hushed, sensing the storm brewing beneath her beauty. Clara lowered her voice. "If you face Holt, you'll need more than rage. You'll need someone who knows his secrets." Ethan studied her, suspicion and longing at war. "Secrets cut both ways," he muttered. Lucas paced outside the saloon, his impatience boiling over. "Why trust her?" he demanded when Ethan stepped into the light. "Women tied to Holt don't choose clean sides." Ethan tightened his coat and replied, "The world ain't clean, boy. Sometimes you walk through mud to reach the fire." Lucas scowled, his hand brushing his revolver as though courage lived in the weight of steel. Ethan studied him, remembering the years when he too believed the world had rules. He said, "If you follow me, you'll find no heroes, only men trying not to drown." Lucas' jaw clenched, but he stood taller. Sheriff Grady Holt strode down the street, silver badge gleaming in the twilight, eyes cold as the desert stone. Townsfolk shrank back as he passed, silence filling the gaps between his boots' clicks. He stopped before the saloon, scanning the porch where Ethan had stood earlier. His lips curled into a smirk. "Cole thinks he can crawl from his hole and scare me?" he muttered. Deputy Frank Mercer followed, tall and rigid, his hand resting near his holster. Holt's gaze swept the town like a vulture circling prey. "This is my land, my law," he growled. His voice carried a threat no one dared answer. The saloon doors swung open, and silence cut through the laughter. Ethan Cole froze when a familiar face emerged from the shadows. A man he once called brother. The scar across the man's cheek told the story of betrayal. Ethan whispered, "You sold me out once, you'll do it again." The man sneered, his hand brushing the edge of his coat. "Grady Holt pays better than loyalty." Lucas Ward's fists tightened, but Ethan's hand stopped him. The weight of betrayal pressed heavier than bullets. Dust swirled at their boots as the room bristled with unease. Ethan's voice was low, steady as steel. "You chose your side. Don't expect mercy when mine finds you." A scream shattered the night as gunfire erupted outside. Ethan rushed into the street, boots pounding the dirt. Flames licked the edges of a wagon as townsfolk scattered in terror. Holt's men fired indiscriminately, bullets slamming into walls. Lucas ducked behind a trough, heart hammering. Ethan shouted, "Get the people out!" His revolver roared, smoke coiling in the air. The cries of children and the thud of hooves tore through the chaos. Sparks from burning wood rained across the street as fear consumed the town. Ethan's teeth clenched against the rising fury. "Holt won't break this town without going through me," he vowed. Gunfire echoed through the canyon walls as Ethan and Lucas fled the ambush. Dust exploded around them, bullets striking stone. Lucas stumbled, clutching his side where a graze bled into his shirt. Ethan grabbed him by the arm, dragging him behind cover. "Keep your head down, boy," Ethan barked. Lucas gasped, "They'll kill us before dawn." The two pressed against jagged rocks, hearts pounding with every ricochet. Ethan's eyes burned with grim resolve. "Not tonight," he said, chambering another round. The canyon swallowed the sound of their breaths, but their fear hung heavy. Above, the moonlight revealed the silhouettes of hunters closing in. At dawn, Ethan faced Holt in the town square, though distance kept their guns silent. Holt's presence bent the crowd into silence, his badge gleaming in the first light. His voice carried like thunder. You think the people want you back, Cole? They fear you more than me. Ethan's jaw clenched, his hand steady at his side. Fear and loyalty, Holt. They'll see you for the vulture you are. Holt's smirk widened, his coat flaring as he turned. By the time they do, there won't be a town left to save. Ethan's rage burned, but he held still, knowing their battle had only begun. In the shadows of the abandoned barn, Clara Weston stood before Ethan, her face pale, voice trembling with urgency. He'll burn the town to ashes if you stand in his way. Ethan's gaze narrowed, suspicion etched into his lines. Why warn me now? Clara's lips quivered, her eyes shifting with secrets. Because Holt trusts me with things he shouldn't, and I'm tired of watching him bleed this land dry. Ethan's grip on his revolver tightened, distrust warring with need. He growled, secrets can kill quicker than bullets. Clara's eyes softened, just for a breath. Then let mine keep you alive. Jedediah Boone sat with Ethan under the dying light, his voice steady but heavy. The storm's closer than you think, Cole, he said, eyes fixed on the horizon. Ethan leaned on his knees, revolver in hand. I don't need a warning, I need a way forward. Jedediah's hand trembled as it touched the scar on his jaw. Every step toward Holt is a grave you dig for yourself. Lucas Ward stood nearby, restless, the impatience of youth written across his face. We can't wait forever, he snapped. Jedediah's voice hardened. Boy, haste feeds the undertaker faster than bullets. Ethan's gaze turned to fire. I'll walk this road, even if it leads straight to hell. The night was restless as Lucas rushed ahead, eager to scout the ridge despite Ethan's warning. His boots slipped on loose stone, his breath quick with nerves. He whispered, I'll prove I'm not just a boy in the shadow of men. But the sound of rifles cocking echoed from above. Holt's men stepped from the rocks, rifles trained. Lucas froze, courage trembling like glass about to shatter. Ethan's distant shout cracked through the dark. Lucas, get down! Bullets split the air, sparks leaping from stone. Lucas stumbled into cover, heart racing, a boy learning too fast what war tastes like. Sheriff Grady Holt walked through the courthouse with Frank Mercer at his side, papers clutched in his hand. He announced with grim pride, by my word, this land is mine, law and deed. The townsfolk who gathered in fear whispered, powerless. Ethan stood in the back, fists tight, jaw hard. Holt's eyes met his with smug certainty. No outlaw will take this from me. The law bends to my hand. Frank Mercer's hand rested firm on his revolver, daring anyone to resist. Ethan's voice cut through the hall. You've poisoned every word written on that paper. One day, it'll choke you. Holt's grin carried the arrogance of a man who thought himself untouchable. Smoke curled above the ranch as flames devoured wood and memories alike. Ethan staggered forward, his chest crushed by the sight. Holt's men rode off, their laughter trailing like knives in the wind. Lucas fell to his knees, choking on ash. They killed everyone, he whispered. Ethan clenched his revolver, teeth grinding until his jaw ached. This is what Holt wants. Ashes where lives once stood. Jedediah stepped beside him, sorrow deep in his eyes. This is the fire vengeance feeds on, son. Walk careful, or it'll own you. Ethan's voice broke with fury. Then let it consume me until Holt burns too. The trap was sprung at the canyon pass. Rocks tumbled from above, sealing the path as Holt's riders thundered in. Ethan raised his revolver, eyes narrowed with resolve. So this is how you want it, Holt. Grady Holt emerged from the dust, mounted and smiling cold. It ends here, Cole. No more running, no more ghosts. Lucas scrambled behind cover, rifle trembling in his grip. Jedediah limped forward, planting himself by Ethan's side. Then we stand together, the old man said, voice steady. Gunfire cracked like thunder as the canyon echoed with chaos, vengeance and survival colliding in the dust. The canyon fell silent after the gunfire, only the echo of hooves fading into the dust. Ethan Cole tightened his grip on his revolver as Sheriff Grady Holt rode forward. Holt raised a document high. This land, every inch, signed over by the law itself. Ethan's face hardened. You hide behind ink and paper while blood stains your hands. Holt's laugh was sharp. Paper makes me untouchable, Cole. You're just an outlaw screaming into the wind. Lucas Ward's eyes widened with fury, and Jedediah Boone muttered, the law itself has been bought. Ethan's voice cut sharp. Then I'll take back with lead what you stole with lies. Clara Weston stepped from the shadows of the canyon, her dress torn from the chaos, eyes darting between Ethan and Holt. He trusts me, she said, voice unsteady, but I can't watch him bleed this town anymore. Ethan's suspicion sharpened. Why should I believe you? Holt's smirk deepened, his eyes on Clara. Because she's mine, Cole. Always has been. Clara flinched, torn between loyalty and survival. Her voice cracked. I did what I had to, but I never wanted this. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then prove it, Clara. Show me where your heart stands. Jedediah Boone's voice carried across the dust. Enough lies, he said, his weathered eyes fixed on Ethan. There's something you never knew. Ethan turned sharply, revolver lowering in disbelief. Jedediah's hand trembled as he pointed at Holt. Your blood ties you, Cole. Holt's brother-in-law to you by the woman you lost. Ethan staggered back as if struck. You knew, he whispered. Holt's smirk cut deeper. Family or not, I'll grind you into dust. Lucas Ward's shock spilled into anger. You've been fighting kin all along, he muttered. Ethan's chest heaved, fury tangled with despair. Ethan's voice cracked with rage. All these years, you hid the truth from me, Jed. Jedediah's eyes glistened with guilt. I thought it would spare you. Holt's laughter boomed like thunder. Spare him? You made him weak. Now he knows he's fighting blood. Ethan's hands shook as he steadied his revolver, torn between vengeance and the truth of kinship. Lucas stepped forward, fire in his eyes. Blood don't excuse monsters. Ethan's voice grew cold, steady as stone. Family or not, Holt, you'll answer for what you've done. The canyon seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the storm to break. The ground shook as Holt's men closed in, rifles raised. Clara Weston screamed, Hell kill us all if you hesitate. Ethan's eyes locked with Holt's, the blood bond now a chain he refused to bear. He lifted his revolver, voice like steel. Blood don't bind me to you, Holt, only justice does. Holt raised his hand, signaling his riders. Lucas shouted, Then let's finish this. The canyon erupted with gunfire, smoke swallowing the air. Jedediah dragged Lucas into cover, while Clara's figure blurred in the haze. Ethan charged forward, vengeance burning brighter than kinship. The canyon lay still after the first shots, dust drifting like smoke from a dying fire. Ethan Cole stood tall, revolver steady, his face carved with resolve. No more running, he growled. Lucas Ward crouched beside him, eyes wide but unyielding. We stand, we fight, the young man said, his voice trembling yet strong. Jedediah Boone tightened his grip on a rifle, his limp barely slowing him. I've seen too many battles end with graves, but I'll see this one through. Ethan's gaze hardened on Sheriff Holt, silhouetted by torchlight. It ends with him. The silence broke into a roar of hooves as Holt's men surged again. Gunfire split the air, and Jedediah Boone stepped forward, shielding Ethan from a rifle crack. The bullet struck his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Ethan shouted, rage burning in his throat, Jed! Lucas dragged the old man behind cover, his hands trembling. Jedediah coughed, blood on his lips. But his voice was calm. I lived my battles. This one belongs to you now. Ethan's chest heaved with fury, his revolver spitting fire as Holt's men fell. Holt's voice rang through the chaos, kill them all. Jedediah grasped Ethan's arm weakly. Make it mean something, he whispered before slipping into unconsciousness. The canyon became a storm of dust and screams as Ethan and Lucas pressed forward. Hi, foul. Lucas, rifle shaking, fired his first true shot, dropping one of Holt's riders. His face twisted in horror at the kill. But Ethan barked, "Keep your aim steady, boy." The two fought side by side, bullets whistling past, sparks leaping from stone. Horses reared as men fell, the ground trembling with chaos. Lucas reloaded, sweat and dirt streaking his face, his voice shaking. "We can't hold forever." Ethan's gaze locked ahead, cold as iron. "We don't need forever, just long enough to bring Holt down." At high noon the next day, the battlefield had shifted to the heart of town. The air hung heavy with silence as Ethan faced Holt in the square. Their shadows stretched long across the dirt. Holt sneered, his badge gleaming in the sun. Outlaw, murderer, ghost of a past long dead. Ethan's eyes never wavered. "I'm no ghost, Holt. I'm the reckoning you buried." Lucas stood at the edge, rifle lowered, knowing this was not his fight. Townsfolk peeked from windows, breath held. The air was a loaded gun waiting to fire. Ethan's hand hovered near his revolver, steady as stone. The world slowed to stillness as Ethan and Holt's hands twitched toward their guns. In a heartbeat, steel flashed and thunder split the square. Dust leapt as bullets ripped the silence. Ethan's revolver barked once, sharp and final. Holt staggered back, surprise frozen on his face, as blood darkened his vest. He collapsed in the dirt, badge glinting in the sun. The townsfolk gasped, silence heavy as a grave. Ethan lowered his revolver, chest heaving, eyes locked on the fallen lawman. Lucas whispered, voice trembling, "It's done." Ethan's voice came rough, hollow. "No. It's just begun." Dust settled over the square as silence claimed the aftermath. Ethan Cole stood above Sheriff Grady Holt's body, revolver lowered, the badge glinting in the dirt. Townsfolk crept from their hiding places, eyes wide with disbelief. Lucas Ward whispered, "He's gone. Holt's reign is over." Ethan's chest rose heavy, his gaze fixed on the fallen lawman. "He took too much before the end," he muttered. Jedediah Boone, pale and weak, leaned against a post, voice trembling. "You've carried your vengeance, son, but it'll weigh you forever." Ethan's jaw clenched, knowing victory brought no peace. Word spread quickly through the town, and fear gave way to whispers of relief. Ethan watched as men and women lifted their children from hiding. Clara Weston stepped forward, her eyes downcast, voice trembling. "He used me, Ethan. I never wanted this." Ethan's gaze bore into her, the weight of betrayal sharp as a blade. Lucas tensed, hand brushing his holster, but Ethan raised a hand. "The past don't wash clean in one confession." Clara's face crumpled with regret, tears cutting through the dust. "Then let me stay and face what I've done," she said softly. Deputy Frank Mercer stepped from the courthouse, his eyes narrowing at Holt's lifeless body. "The law ain't dead with him," he barked. Ethan's revolver shifted slightly, but Mercer raised his hands. "I'll face the people's judgment. Holt twisted justice, but I won't die on his side." Townsfolk murmured, emboldened by the fall of their oppressor. Jedediah Boone's voice carried over the crowd, weak but firm. "Let the law stand on truth now, not fear." Ethan's eyes lingered on Mercer, the choice between vengeance and mercy burning deep. At last he turned away, leaving the man to the crowd. As the sun dipped low, Lucas Ward stood by Ethan, his youthful fire tempered by the day's bloodshed. "We fought, and we won," he said, though his voice carried more sorrow than triumph. Ethan studied him, seeing the boy's innocence burned away. "You grew up fast, Lucas," he said. Lucas's gaze hardened. "Too fast." Jedediah sat nearby, bandaged and weary, nodding with heavy wisdom. "The frontier makes men before they're ready." Ethan's stare drifted to the horizon, the light painting the desert in red. "Victory don't heal wounds," he murmured, "but it shows you the scars you'll carry." Night returned, quiet and heavy. Ethan saddled his horse under the pale glow of the moon. Lucas approached, his voice soft. "You could stay. The town needs you." Ethan adjusted the reins, his eyes shadowed. "I gave them back their freedom, not myself." Clara watched from the doorway, her face unreadable, torn between guilt and longing. Jedediah leaned against the fence, silent, his eyes filled with understanding. Ethan mounted slowly, the weight of the past in every movement. He said, "A man like me don't belong in peace." He spurred his horse forward, riding into the desert, swallowed by starlight.